In a land of myth and a time of magic, the destiny of a great kingdom rests on the shoulders of a young boy. His name, Merlin.
Hello, nomads, hello, party people, hello, strangers everywhere. My name is my name is V, and welcome back to the Merlin Weekly Retrospective. I'm sorry this episode is late, it's just that I actually found the main character of Merlin in another show yesterday in this program called Humans, which is basically synth creations like android, cyborg creature humans interacting with humans in a distant future long ahead of time. And Colin Baker, I believe it's Colin Baker, the main actor for Merlin, who plays Merlin, is one of the leading characters in the show. So I've been trying to watch that yesterday, so that's why I was backlogged yesterday for the reshoot, and Tuesday I just came off from work and I was too exhausted to do anything, so I apologize for that. But we are back in the swing of things as we talk about episode 9 of Excalibur, which technically, when I first watched the show many years ago when it was first on BBC, that was actually the first episode I watched before I rewatched the entire first season when series 1 concluded. Anywho, let us get back into the swing of things. So first we have the title sequence, like how we do with this show, which is common laissez-faire by now. And yet the episode actually opens up to a crypt/mortuary as Nimue appears, myself of all time throughout series 1. I'll go over what a sylph is at the end of the review, I promise. Where she uses necromancy to raise someone from the dead. Ooh, spooky. But what's the purpose? What else? To kill Uther Pendragon. What the fuck did you expect anything else of? So, we then cut from that interesting scene of necromancy from a powerful sorceress to Camelot, where Uther is swearing Arthur in to become the crown prince and making it official that he's the... I don't understand that whole crown prince thing from nobility, because if you're already prince, you don't need to be crown prince. Otherwise, just kind of redundant for a ceremony. But whatever. So after that oddness, we then have in the background Gwen and Merlin having their own commentary on the crowning ceremony and making jokes about how Merlin is proud of him. Which you guys could see is like some nice little character development of over time they've grown to respect and care about one another as friends and not just as servant and master, slave owner and slave thing. But in the midst of all the celebration within the main hall, which is basically on maybe the second or third floor of the castle, from one of the windows on the, I would say the left of the set, the Black Knight from Arthurian lore just comes bursting through the window and is just strolling through the main hall. What? And then, while he's strolling through the hall, the whole main cast and some of the extras just looking at him with that whole confused over the plot element look on their face, just like, Are you fucking seeing this? This motherfucker jumped through a window to get in our main hall. How is this shit possible? But he's just strolling through on his horse like a badass. People see the crest on his shield. And then he throws his gauntlet down, which if you know what that means back in the day, that means somebody better be fighting me to the death. Because I just bursting through a window. A 2 to 3 story window. I want to brawl. Fight me then, son. Sorry. Working around a lot of certain characteristic children kind of brings that out of me. So, after he drops the gauntlet, no one else is looking around to pick up the challenge except for this one non-important character named Owain, who is a knight of Camelot. Owain is gonna die. That's not a spoiler or anything. If he's not important, taking up a challenge for Mortal Kombat, basically, he's gonna die, because he's not one of the main characters. So the Black Knight issues the challenge after Owain takes it up by saying it's going to be trial by combat to the death. Then he just rides out while Uther, for some odd reason, looks on in disbelief and shock as he leaves. And then we get the opening sequence, where, like I was saying earlier, the title sequence and opening sequence kind of give away a lot involving certain episodes within the first series. And this is kind of when two of the clips that you see playing out come to fruition in this episode. So after the opening sequence, we have Merlin and Gaius trying to talk about who is the Black Knight and if Owain stands a chance. Gaius obviously knows because he was in the room, and if you watch the scene closely enough, he has that same expression that Uther has, almost as if the director was like, we want both these characters to have that same look about disbelief and caution without giving away too much of their own expression to the other main cast. If you watch the faces closely enough to see all of the eye motions, facial sort of things, and how their body motions sort of display their own secret information. So after Gaius tries to ease Merlin's mind, we then have a revisited scene of Gandalf the Librarian and the library, as Gaius tries to roll in to find out the information that we then find out. That the knight is none other than a figure by the name of Tristan de Boys. Although suspiciously, because it's in the records of the same books that were about around the Great Plague that was for Ian's family from A Remedy to Cure All Ills, it's kind of established that Tristan was among one of the dead, but has been dead for a very long time, way before said plague happened. Anywho, from that motion, we then have Gaius going to Uther to then relay the same information, and then he clarifies that Tristan has been dead for 20 years because Uther himself killed him. Why did he kill him? We'll get into why in a few. But first, we then have to have that whole motion sink in as we then move into the next day, as we have an establishing shot of the Black Knight just standing in front of the castle, staring at the grandeur of the set, which I found out from my little sister Jasmine that it's all set in France. So it's actually a real life French castle being used as the set to display all of the nice little texture stuff that's put on the whole stone marble stuff, the structure, and how everything is paletted out, which is interesting to know and a really good fun fact. So during the morning, Arthur tries to give Owain some advice because this is Mortal Kombat, guys. This isn't like that whole Earthrealm versus the Netherrealm sort of Mortal Kombat where it's the entire universe at stake. This is you're having a duel with one-on-one people for no good reason other than just to kill, and you have to do this or you'll die. How is Owain taking it? He's being a cocky fuck saying, I got this. He doesn't know how I fight, I don't know how he fights, but I got this. I got this. I got this. And then Arthur's still trying to instill him the tactics that he needs to do, watching his movements, making sure he doesn't do anything reckless, get a well-aimed blow with his sword. And even Gwen, coming on the request of Morgana, comes in and give him a red ribbon for good luck. But Owain's character, cocky as fuck, he is not going to listen. So after we have that charming scene of Owain, who we all know is going to die, we then have to go back to all of Camelot going towards the Arena Center, which we kind of haven't seen since the episode of Valiant for the Night Tournament. Interesting. So, after we have a stroll moment for Owain to get there, all the people of Camelot gathering, and then Arthur and Uther commencing with the fight itself, and then issuing the rules of Mortal Kombat, it's basically pugilism or weaponry based, and the fight only ends after someone dies. Straightforward. So, from then on, we then have a detailed fight scene. And that detailed fight scene pretty much goes on and on, involving sword and shield style of knight play versus two-handed claymore fighting style that goes on and on and on and on and on and on until Owain gets one well-placed blow at not the entire audience's vision, but through Merlin's own quick vision through his sorcerer's eyes, not like the entire crowd that just sees a blur motion that doesn't even pierce the skin. And yet here's the interesting note. When Owain does that well-placed blow, the Black Knight does not go down. He instead trashes Owain, and then as soon as he's on the ground off screen, he beheads Owain, killing him and winning the Mortal Kombat. Where he then throws his gauntlet down, and then Arthur, being the only one that has any set of balls in the Pendragon family, tries to go and get it, but Uther's just like, no, you stay right here. And then another non-important character by the name of Sir Pellinor goes down to take up the challenge. He is also going to die. But following this notion, Arthur then tries to argue with Uther about what the hell was going on. Why didn't either of them take up the challenge? Because, you know, they're the leading figures of Camelot, and they should at least show that they want to fight for their entire kingdom, because this is a giant threat that is kind of personal to the guard and to the royal family. I mean, if I was someone in charge of the entire field of Camelot, I would want to show that at least I have an effort towards trying to save my people and show that I'm not just a hoity-toity noble. But no. Uther is pretty much showing his character of being incredibly cowardice and very inhuman towards actually giving a fuck for anyone that's not himself because of some stupid reasons. So during the nightfall before the next Mortal Kombat, Merlin and, you know, Gaius, the pimp obviously, venture down into the mortuary / crypt to find clues behind the Black Knight, where they find what Nimue has done, my very special sylph, and uncovers that the person that she arose is obviously the Black Knight, aka Tristan de Boys, where we then finally get into the backstory about Tristan's death, where he was the brother, get this, he is the brother of Uther's late wife of Ugraine. And Ugraine died from childbirth, which we already knew from previous episodes way back when. But Tristan blames Uther for good reasons, but we'll get into that in a few. And he tries to challenge Uther into Mortal Kombat, but Uther succeeds and then kills him. And then he then starts off with the whole giant genocide of magic users and his war on magic. We'll get into the reason why in this one review alone, because the reason behind his hatred is a stupid one. Just saying. So, in order to illustrate why Tristan's soul itself came back, apparently he cursed the land of Camelot to return to exact his revenge on Uther for what he has done, and then illustrating another new creature introduced into the world of Merlin, which are wraiths. If you guys don't know what wraiths are, they're pretty much like what ghouls and revenants are. Spirits of the undead that are brought back by a powerful emotion. Revenants, it's for whatever reason that you want. For ghouls, it's undead creatures brought about by anyone involving blood-sucking abilities, not just vampires, obviously. But wraiths are brought back by vengeance, and are only brought back by powerful magic users, aka Nimue. So, from just knowing this information about Nimue's whole bringing back the Wraith thing, although we only know it's Nimue, not the rest of the cast, we then cut back to the big fight between, what was his name again? Pellinor fighting against the Black Knight in the next morning. No character development about who he is, or what his character motivation is, or even his one quirk. He just goes in, does the challenge, and then goes into the fight. And it ends just the same way as Owain's. He gets a clear blow through the night. No one else seems to find it suspicious besides the main cast that he doesn't go down from the main blow. He dies off screen, then throws his gauntlet down to the ground. However, instead of another non-important character picking up the challenge, the person, instead of the Black Knight throwing down his gauntlet, kind of threw you guys off there now, was Arthur, because he was tired of the shit involving no one of nobility trying to stand up and take down this knight to save the other people of Camelot. And then the Black Knight accepts because he just thinking to himself, I could kill Uther after I kill his son. Then my revenge will be complete. And after doing this completely understandable and very noble effort, Uther tries to bitch him out, saying that he shouldn't have done that, and that it was totally wrong for him to think about his people and actually sacrifice himself for the greater good of everyone inside Camelot. Wow. Wow, I know I hate Uther, but honestly, this is the episode that makes me hate him the most. And we're going to get into the crux of why extremely soon. So, honestly, this is the one episode out of every other episode after 8 long episodes before that pretty much show the growth of Arthur's character. Him starting off as this giant, arrogant asshole prick, and now actually putting his best foot forward to show that he's not this one pampered prince. He's just seriously trying to make a grand effort to make sure that no matter what happens, he's there for his people. He's there honestly to do a great effort for everyone involved in his kingdom, which is a very powerful notion. But then Uther tries to derail that whole thing with his own de-evolution by simply saying that he shouldn't have done this, that he's gonna die, and that there should have never been anyone in the place of the royal family to fight the knight, to show that the royal family is behind the common people. That is the major difference between the characters of Uther and Arthur. Arthur will go beyond all measurement to try and make sure that the people of Camelot are safe, even if it means risking his life, while Uther is so much up his own ass, up his own arrogance, they cannot see when he fucks up over having the best things in mind for his people. And that will be his downfall very soon. Not in the next series or anything soon, but soon nonetheless. So then following this, we then go into the scene of the true father and son pair of the show, Merlin and Gaius, as they're trying to go over how they could defeat the Wraith. And Merlin thinks he knows how to defeat him, but we're going to pause on that and then go into Gaius, then taking the information of it being a Wraith of Tristan de Bois to Uther. When Uther learns the situation, he's pretty much saying that Tristan shouldn't have blamed him because his sister and his wife died from magic, and should blame magic instead of Uther because that's what he wants people to do, blame magic for the reasons for everything. And we're seriously getting into why he hates magic users really soon in this one episode alone. But Uther, being the voice of reason for everyone involved in the audience, is saying what everyone else should have done. Uther should have nut up instead of shut up, and he should tell Arthur the honest truth behind his birth, because Arthur's birth in this series is very interesting. But Uther's just like, no! No one should know it besides you and me. I will kill you if you do the right thing by my son. Now get the hell out of my space. And he's like, okay, alright, whatever. And then we cut back to Merlin. Remember when I was pausing right there about why Merlin's plan may or may not work? Here's it in the forefront. When Merlin sees the big Black Knight just standing there looking at the castle, which I would do myself, I'd be like, this is a nice day of murdering people, but this castle makes it all the worthwhile, just staring at its glory and luster. I could stare at it all day. Merlin decides to use some mortal magic to destroy the Wraith, but soon learns that he cannot kill it with just mortal magic. No mortal weapon nor mortal magic will kill this unstoppable creature. And seeing this, Merlin decides to do plan B, which is try to talk Arthur out of this by using the logical route of saying that he shouldn't do this as a challenge, to just pretty much put his bravery and courage on display, even though Arthur's doing it from a good place. But Arthur, being his natural self of being hard-headed, will not listen to reason. And from there, we then just have to cut over to an interesting moment in the show that I feel like should have happened regardless. An honest-to-goodness scene between Uther and Nimue in the same environment for a scene. And this is when we get the entire grasp on everything involving motivation for Uther's character. Why is Nimue a villain to everyone in Camelot? Why does Uther hate everything involving magic? What is the big secret behind Arthur's entire birth? Well, prepare yourselves, guys, because if you haven't seen the show, this is your giant spoiler alert. You guys can skip ahead a couple minutes or just not watch the rest of the video at this point, because this is your giant spoiler warning. Peep this. Nimue used to be one of the magic users on the court for Uther back when he didn't hate magic users, and he was married to, obviously, Ugraine, sister to Tristan. However, Ugraine was barren, and yet they both wanted a child. So Uther, not understanding the whole equivalent exchange between magic and alchemy, in this case magic, goes to Nimue saying that he wants a child. And yet he doesn't understand the fundamentals behind an equivalent exchange for magic. To bring life, aka his son Arthur, there has to be death, which resulted in the death of his wife, where she died in childbirth. During doing so, Uther, not recognizing that it was his own arrogance for wanting a child this way, decides to blame all magic users for his own ignorance and naivete, and then instrument an entire slaughter of magic users in the entire realm of Ambien to illustrate his own hatred for magic users for what happened to his wife in regards to the birth of his son, who would then be destined to bring an entire new era of magic and humans living together in harmony. Now, from hearing all of this motivation, I cannot honestly say that Uther has any right to hate anyone but himself. I will get into why soon, but first, here's what is the nail in the coffin for his character. Throughout a brief moment with Nimue, throughout the entire conversation, he is saying that if Nimue did not offer him the entire deal and just had his and then had his wife live on regardless without ever having a son, he would have been happy. Which is his own way of saying if his son was never born and his wife lived instead, his life would be a lot simpler. He wouldn't be on that whole crusade of his if he didn't have the wonderful son that will lead in the entire world of Ambien into a grander scale of life. Oh, Uther, just tell us more of your idioticness. Tell us more, please. I just want to wring your throat until you're nothing more than a puppet for me to use as battering practice. You sickening piece of shit. Anywho, following this notion, we have a scene of Merlin going into Gandalf the Librarian's library to find more information on a weapon to kill the Wraith. And yet Gandalf the Librarian decides, he's like, settle down, son, I got you. Here are some fables. So, there were certain knights that ended up having magical weapons that could kill the dead by having the breath of a dragon breathe on their weapon to create a holy weapon beyond all compare. Are you guys seeing where I'm going with this? Good. So, hearing this information, Merlin already runs out of the library, just kind of hopping into his Black X6 Phantom, just trying to get at his White X6 Panda for his own boo thing that he doesn't even know that's on the low of Gwen, where he gets the finest sword that her father has ever made, to then go all the way to John Hurt Dragon making another appearance back to back to create the one legendary weapon throughout the entire Arthurian lore, the weapon Excalibur, born from the finest blacksmith in all of Ambion's land of Camelot, from the greatest dragon, creating it from his breath to create a holy weapon beyond all compare for all weapons within fiction, Excalibur. However, John Hurt Dragon's very astute with what he wants to do. At first, he didn't want to make the weapon because he wanted the Wraith to kill Uther. But he then decided to change his mind when Merlin decided to point out that it's Arthur that's trying to fight the Wraith, and if he does, he'll die. So he makes a condition. The weapon can only be used by Arthur, and only Arthur. If anyone else uses that weapon, there would be chaos. Remember this. So, what is going on when Merlin is doing all of this? In the background, back in the main focus of the story, Gaius and Uther come together once again to try and divulge a plan to save Arthur from himself, where Gaius drugs Arthur to be unconscious for an entire period of time, from where he drugs him to the next day after the duel would be over, so Uther could stand in to fight the Wraith himself. By doing so, after Merlin goes through all that work to make Excalibur, Uther takes up the weapon to go into a full-on fight scene with the Wraith, and although ending up killing the Wraith, John Hurt Dragon feels what's going on, and after all is said and done, after all the wrap-up, after all the discussions about what's going on and saying whatever they want to say, I'm going to ignore all of the other conversations because they're not as important as what's going on right now. When Merlin goes back to talk to the dragon, he is furious. John Hurt is angry. He is pissed. He feels betrayed because Uther used the sword that's only meant for Arthur. What happens next, though, is what cements a lot of things that's going to happen throughout the rest of the series, for whereas Excalibur for means that are very much crucial for it to be around. Because humanity has used the new blade made by dragons that was on one of the grandest swords made by mortal hands, Merlin is tasked to throw the sword into a location that no man can ever go to. So, Merlin decides to go into a location similar to the Gates of Avalon, from the episode Gates of Avalon, to then throw the sword into the lake, which can only be accessed by a magic user or magical creature to gather it from the depths of the entire lake. And then we just close out the episode in this ambiance. No other hints, no other clues to the next episode, because with Excalibur out of the way, we no longer have that Deus Ex Machina there. However, we no longer have that one crucial element to what makes Arthur one of the greatest kings of all time within mythology. And that is Excalibur. What are my thoughts in general? Well, although I enjoy the episode, here is my problem with the whole thing in general from what the entire series has established. Although a lot of people would say that Uther's ambitions towards ending magic are noble because of him proving to be right about certain people being evil with magic, here is the argument that is placed in front of us. Uther decided out of naivete and out of desperation to not seek out someone to be a surrogate that was actually happening in noble times, because surrogacy was not something that's new. It's been around since before history was recorded. No one ever talks about that because apparently no one ever wants to acknowledge that surrogacy is a crucial part of everything involving, you know, the birth of life. Uther decides, fuck everything else. Let's just use magic to create a child and then bring it into the world. Oh wait, my wife is dead. I blame everything involving magic because of my own stupidity. Idiot. Listen to yourself. The characters around the entire universe of Merlin, they only want magic restored to Camelot because there is a good version of magic and a bad version of magic. Magic can only defeat magic, and that has been established time and time again throughout the entire series. And yet everyone else involving the series that has to deal with Uther cannot get that cemented into his head. Why? Because his own stupidity cemented this entire thing. His character ended up having some redeemable moments throughout other episodes, sure, but this is the linchpin throughout his entire motivation and his character arcs. He only hates everything around him because of his own stupidity for having everything around him destroyed. Everyone trusting him as a noble king and not as a sociopathic psychopath. Done! Everything about it, done! His wife being killed, his son being born and then the target of so many other people, others dying and then coming after him for vengeance. Everything involving the series until a certain point is his fault. And yet he'll never come up for the responsibilities of it because he's still in that mindset of he's doing the right thing. No, you're not. You're dooming everyone around you for your good king mission when you're not thinking to yourself, maybe I fucked up. Maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe I should fix my mistakes before something horrible happens to the children I claim to love. And that one moment in time where he actually says that he regrets having Arthur is the linchpin that makes me hate his character to death. Guys, I have an adopted daughter. I do. That is an honest truth. I'm not saying that as a character. I'm not saying that as someone that's just trying to get notoriety. I have an adopted daughter. She has adopted kids herself that she says are her babies. She takes care of them, so they're her children basically, making me a grandfather. I would never say to anyone that I regret ever being a father figure and adopted father to someone else because I actually love my adopted daughter. I love her to death. I've seen her babies grow from simple several-month-olds to now being almost 1 year and some month-year-olds. I love them to death too. I will never, in my life, say the whole thing of, I wish you didn't tell me to do this action so I would not have this child in my life. That is something that no matter how you phrase it, you can never take back or make yourself likable in my eyes, ever. That makes you dead to me. That makes your character dead to me. That makes whatever you say or do dead to me. Now we got the entire rant about Uther out of the way. Let's move on to the rest of my synopsis over the episode. Frankly, I find the rest brilliant. Not only for seeing my sylph of Nimue, that is, my sorceress I'd like to fuck. Not only for seeing the character growth of Arthur, and not only seeing the awesomeness of just Merlin being quick on his feet for doing stuff involving analyzing the situation and then trying to get an actual solution, but the introduction of Excalibur. Seriously, Excalibur is one of my favorite weapons throughout the entire lore of mythology. It's one of the greatest swords ever created throughout anything involving mythology. Well, the third best weapon. Then there's also the Muramasa and this one sword that's lost throughout all of mythology that only my grandfather told me about. And yet, I loved every moment of seeing it in a fight scene because it just illustrates how powerful it is. But I'm just sad that it ended up being disposed of as a Deus Ex Machina to be hidden until Arthur's ready to have it. And that's only my full-on thoughts about Excalibur. Frankly, for anyone else that's going to pick up the series, if you're going to watch this as your first episode, then you're coming up really, really nicely. You're going to have a fun time with this episode, but if you watch this and then watch the other episodes afterwards, you'll probably end up hating Uther a different way than I do. But come join me next time as I talk about the moment of truth. Another really great episode that I cannot wait to talk to you guys about. So, peace and take care, my lovely little nomads everywhere. And to all of my party people, I'll see you guys next time. To all my strangers, I'll see you guys in another video. And to all my magic users out there, keep on applying finesse to all of your spells. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.